Jenks Planning Commission, 6 p.m. Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. We'll begin with a roll call.
Wilson.
Here.
Boers. Bowman.
Here.
Sellers.
Here.
Nixon.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Chair West.
Here. First item of business is consideration and appropriate action relating to request for approval of the consent agenda. I understand that consent agenda item 1B has been removed by the applicant, so we have 1A, approve the minutes from the previous meeting, and 1C. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Let's vote, please, Brenda.
Wilson.
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
Sellers.
Yes.
Nixon.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. We will pull agenda item number 2. Number 3 is JZ 24-693, request for a rezoning from RS1 to LC, local commercial, general location 1119 West Main Street. Mrs. Hilton, please.
Thank you, Chair West and Planning Commission. It's nice to be here with you this evening. The item before you is actually two parts. Item number 4 is the request for a comp plan amendment, and item number 3 on your agenda is the actual rezoning request. So if it's okay with you, I'll talk about both of them in conjunction. So Brandon's pulled up a page that has the zoning map and a page that has the comprehensive land use plan. In the, let me see what page this is. I'll turn here. This is page 26 of 72. If you're looking at your packet, the request is for a property that abuts Main Street but is currently a residential lot and is being used as a residential lot. It can continue to be used as a residential lot, but if it ever ceases, then if it ceases for, I think it's more than 6 months, then it can't go back to residential. But in this case, the property owners have requested that it be rezoned from the residential use to local commercial, and that will match the JZ 24292 that we just recently rezoned. And the comprehensive plan amendment, it should be 2436. I had the wrong number there, so I apologize for that. The comprehensive plan, you can see we have local commercial all the way on the west on Main Street. We have a local commercial on the south, and we just had a couple of residential lots. We let them come forward as they requested rather than doing a broad sweep of amendments. So PA 2436 is the land use amendment, and they're asking to go from medium intensity single family to local commercial, and they're asking to rezone from residential to local commercial. This does meet the intent of the comprehensive plan, as it has been a goal to see the Main Street properties rezone and be utilized for retail purposes. So staff does recommend approval of this request. Both requests.
Thank you. Any questions from the Planning Commission for staff? No? Okay. Does anyone from the audience wish to speak on this item? Anyone wish to speak on this item from the audience? No? Okay, we'll go and close the floor. And if there's a motion for this agenda item, we will proceed.
Motion to accept this item? Second.
So we'll have two votes. We'll have JZ 24693 and item number 4, which was PA 24-36.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Brandon, go ahead and vote, please.
Wilson.
Yes.
Bowman.
Yes.
Sellers.
Yes.
Nixon.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. And then we'll need a second motion for the, is it the land use amendment?
PA 2436.
Yeah.
That technically was a public hearing as well, though, so if you wanna,
Okay.
yeah.
Does anyone wish to speak on that agenda item, number 4? All right, seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the floor for that. And we'll entertain a motion for,
I'll make a motion to approve PA 24-36.
Second.
let's vote, please.
Wilson,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. That takes us to item number 5, JZ 24-695, a request for zone change from an OM office medium to a CS commercial shopping, general location 502 East A Street. Marseille?
Yes, thank you, Chair West. This is a property that's been vacant for many years. It's adjacent to Alien Games, if you're familiar with that property. And it has, yeah, you can zoom in, maybe you'll see it a little bit better. It's right off of A Street and Fifth. And this applicant is in the process of purchasing, so they're in their due diligence period. And the current zoning is both OM and commercial shopping. I did request for them to consider downtown core, and they opted for commercial shopping. The biggest difference would be a couple of uses, and with commercial shopping, anything moving forward would have to require parking, whereas downtown core does not require parking. So currently, the lot is split, so at some point it was office and commercial shopping, and they're asking to rezone the entire lot to commercial shopping. It is for an insurance office, and if you look on the zoning map, to the north, we have some RM3 multifamily. To the south, we have commercial general, and to the west, we have downtown core, and to the east, we have office medium. And I have a couple of photographs you can see in the packet that I stole, and I gave full credit to Realtor.com. Staff does recommend approval of this rezoning request to commercial shopping.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Hilton. So Stan, if they're going to go CS, then they will provide parking.
Yes, sir, per the
That's
code.
what you said, okay. I think that's good.
What did you say about a insurance agency?
They are looking to build an insurance office.
So office medium wouldn't take care of that?
The setbacks on office medium are too large. It would not. It's like I have to pull my book out. I think it's, no, I'm not gonna quote it. And I don't know why Charlotte didn't call me and tell me that I didn't have my chart in this one. It's like, what in the world? Where's the chart? How in the world do I know what we're doing? I don't have a chart. I don't know how I missed it, but every once in a while, I make a mistake. Let's see. So the setbacks for office medium are, on the front is 40 feet. And then on the exterior side is 40 feet. So it literally is bigger than the lot, almost. So it was impossible to build anything with office zoning.
Any other questions of staff? No? Is the applicant present this evening?
I do
Applicant
not
present
think
for
so.
item 4? I'm sorry, item 5?
I think they might have forgotten.
Okay,
I didn't remind them.
all right. Does anyone from the public, anyone from the audience want to speak on item 5? All right, I see no one. We'll go ahead and close the floor and hear further discussion or a motion for agenda item number 5.
I do have a question.
Yes, sir.
If half of it's already office medium, and if the setbacks were too big for it to be usable, makes me wonder why it was zoned office medium in the first place.
It may have been part of a larger group of lots previously that were more buildable, or the setbacks in the previous zoning code may not have been so large.
Okay.
Mhm.
Any other discussion? Okay, is there a motion on that, number 5, please?
I motion to approve JZ 24-695.
Second.
Let's vote. Brandon?
Wilson,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
Yes.
Stevens. Yes. Chair West.
Yes. Item 6, JZ 24 SUP 122 is a request for a rezoning from IL Industrial Light to Commercial Shopping with a specific use permit overlay to allow for a car wash. The location of this is west of Elm, south of the Creek Turnpike. Mrs. Hilton again, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair West. This request came to us, we met with the developer, the car wash owner, and the architect initially, and talked through the potential of that site and some of the challenges and issues. This is, like you said, south of the Creek Turnpike and west of Elm. It is also north of Polecat Creek, and so therefore it's adjacent to Polecat Creek. And then on the other side of Polecat Creek, we would note is the property owned by the city, the large ranch. So I wanted to point that out because I think that that kind of stimulated some conversation amongst the public that you'll probably hear about later. Because I did receive an email, which I did forward to you all, and there were other questions. So currently, the zoning is industrial light. The request, that's not right. Strike through that. The request is commercial shopping with PUD 120, or sorry, SUP 122. So this is a specific use permit, and we don't get these very often. You would not be able to do a car wash by right in any category except, I believe, commercial general. And we'll look at the chart here in just a minute. But you couldn't do it in industrial, so you did have to rezone no matter what. I asked them to not do, to not request commercial general because I felt like commercial shopping had far fewer uses that were undesirable. And I felt like commercial shopping was a really good fit for that lot. And knowing that there is a lot of floodplain and floodway adjacent to it, there's just a very small area where that it can be developed well. So it kind of limits the number of things that could be put on the lot. If you look on page 39, plating would be required, and it does meet the intent of the comprehensive plan land use map. One of the biggest things that we talked about, and they were in agreement, and that would be securing access between the Quick Trip lot and this site, because we felt like it's very common for people to get there, fill up your car, get your snacks, whatever, and then get your car washed or vice versa. And being able to go from one lot to the other is very reasonable, and we would request that. However, I do not believe that we have an answer from Quick Trip at this point, but that is something that we are requesting. The other things that we talked about and that I pointed out in the staff report is number 4, and that would be additional screening along Elm. When we do anything on A Street that is north of Main Street and we have a parking lot, we do require additional screening, and I've requested that they provide additional screening because a lot of times it just ends up looking like a sea of parking, and then you have some little sticks and things sticking up. All those vacuums is what they really are, but they look like sticks when you're going fast. That we do have drive-through standards already in our UDO, and they would need to look at that. And of course, they would have to look at the floodplain and go by the code there, section 16-8-13. There would, of course, be lots of engineering. That's not part of the conversation tonight. So I'll just remind you all and remind the public that these are land use hearings, and we're here to discuss whether or not it is appropriate for a car wash to be located south of Quick Trip and west of Elm. And so a specific use permit is It's found originally in our state statute, and then we have adopted it as a city. And there are certain uses, and I'll just read straight from the code, such as, and I put a car wash and commercial shopping that is designated as specific uses because of, one, either the size of the land they require. So a lot of times a church requires a specific use permit because they usually require a lot of parking, they require a lot of land, and there can be traffic, even though it's limited to certain hours and certain days, it still has an impact. So we generally, that would require a specific use permit. They are specialized in nature, so a car wash is a very specialized type of product. A lot of times, you can have automotive uses that would, like a very large automotive, like an auto body shop or something like that, they can go by right in some places, but in other places they wouldn't be able to go. So a third reason why is because they more intensely dominate the area in which they are located. That would not be the case here, and they generate effects on the general public that are broader in scope than other uses permitted in the district. So I just highlighted they're specialized in nature. And then I gave you the code 16-5-9 that when we updated the UDO, we had already, the Scrubs Car Wash at 121st and Elm had some issues with the public, and the public had come forward, and there were some things adopted in our code following that. And you were probably here for those discussions. And so we took those and we added additional things. So number one, car washes seeking to locate in CG or adjacent to a residential use, et cetera. The car wash may not be established without a specific use permit in accordance with this section. All car wash facilities, this is not CG, so it didn't apply, but it is requiring a specific use permit. All car wash facilities and accessory equipment, such as vacuums, dryers, accessories, shall be set back a minimum of 200 feet from any property in a residential district, and in this case, we're 1,200 feet from the closest residential district. All car wash facilities shall be screened from view from any adjoining property in a residential district or that contains a residential use by a solid screening fence or a wall at least 8 feet high, which is not applicable, but we did, as I said already, ask for additional screening along Elm. And then blowers or noise-producing equipment shall be directed away, basically, from a residential use, which would not be applicable because of the distance. So if you look at the chart of 16-3-1, I show here, if you were to adopt a local commercial zoning or a commercial shopping or commercial general or IL, what the setbacks would be. And you can see that in the first chart. And then if you go on down, this use chart shows I used local commercial, commercial shopping, commercial general, and IL. So basically, a specific use permit has a sunset date. So if nothing happened within 2 years, then the specific use permit goes away, but the underlying zoning stays. So for this request, they have to have the commercial shopping zoning and they have to have the specific use permit. So if something happened and they did not build the car wash, the commercial shopping zoning does not go away. The IL goes away if you approve it tonight, but commercial shopping would stay regardless. So highlighted in yellow are the different permitted uses. P stands for permitted, S stands for specific use permit. So if it's a P, then anyone in the future, even if it wasn't a car wash, would still be allowed to do those by right. And when I say by right, that means there would not be another public hearing. So they would just be allowed. So if your property is zoned residential, there are certain things that you can do on your property by right. If your property is zoned industrial, there are certain uses that you can, that are allowed to take place, and you don't have to get permission from the city. You just have to meet the standards for the Vulcan area and things like that. So if you keep going, I did outline or give you the specifics on a specific use permit. And B is really the criteria that it says that council finds in the application, but I think that this is relevant for the Planning Commission tonight. Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? and adopted policies? Yes. Does it comply with all requirements imposed by this article, any applicable use-specific requirements in Article 5, and use-specific standards? So that goes back to where things are located and the floodplain and other stuff. That's not in actual 5, that's in 8, I believe. Is it consistent with the purpose of this UDO and the governing district? Yes. When the purposes of the UDO and governing district cannot be met, the applicant may use the PUD process addressing the concerns of the specific use permit. And this was something we adopted in 20, I think it was last year, maybe 2022. No, probably 23, where what always happened for years and years and years, if you can't meet all the requirements of the code, then you have to ask for a specific use or for a planned unit development. And so we just actually wrote it into the code. If something requires a specific use permit, but you need some exceptions, let's say from the setback, but you can meet everything else, you would use these criteria for evaluation, but you would still have to go through the PUD process to get the exceptions. Is that clear as mud? Okay, so basically, if you can't meet some of the standards of the UDO, you use the evaluation criteria for the SUP and also whatever's required in the PUD. So then you get a double whammy. If you look on page 44, I actually pasted in the Oklahoma State statutes that tells you the requirements and things that may be considered. So when you are looking at a specific use permit, when it comes before you, you can look at the permitted use. So this is a car wash, so you need to consider that. The lot size, the setbacks, the heights, the required facilities. Buffers, open space, lighting, signage, landscaping, parking, and loading. Compatibility, land use density, bonding, insurance, and such development standards. And operational conditions and safeguards that are indicated to be important to the welfare and protection of adjacent property and the community as a whole. So if you look at the zoning map on page 44, to the north, you have commercial shopping, and that's Quick Trip, and beyond that is the Turnpike. And can you go to page 44, Brandon, please? And to the south is Ag and Polecat Creek, and then you have the Ag property owned by the city. To the west is Ag and Polecat Creek, and to the east is Ag, and all of these properties are undeveloped except for the one further on the other side of Polecat Creek. If you look at the land use map, it shows that this area was designated to be developed for local commercial. And it's a very tiny little area. It looks like all you can see is the Quick Trip. So you have Polecat Creek in blue, and then you have green space in green, and then you have pink, which stands for local commercial. Then I grabbed a few shots of this property from Google. Might have been Bing. Staff recommends conditional approval of the rezoning this property to commercial shopping with specific use permit 122. And that is all I have. I think they may have an updated site plan.
All right. Questions about this?
So you're waiting on Quick Trip for an answer on the easement, correct? I mean, the access. Most likely, they would want some monetary compensation for that? Do you
Maybe.
feel? And so if that was the case, then would the owners be willing to pay?
The owner is present this evening, and I
Okay.
will let them
Okay.
answer that. But the owner and the applicant are both aware of this request from the city.
Okay, okay.
They have this similar setup at 101st and Memorial. So they're right beside a Quick Trip, and they have access between the two.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. they do. That is correct. And we know someone who works for Quick Trip. Just saying. Maybe we could get an affirmative answer.
Any other questions? Marcy, I have a question about the additional screening along Elm. What are we proposing there for additional screening
I
along
think I
Elm?
recommended, can you go to, Brandon, can you go to page, the site plan? You may have to turn it sideways. On my computer screen, this was really big, and I cannot read it on here. You can see where I put a green zigzag line over here on this one. See up here? So I just said along Elm, parking area landscaping, and I recommended that they follow 16-6-D, a low masonry wall with a height of which provides effective screening to maximize the height of, to a maximum height of 3 feet shall be used in conjunction with required landscaping as seen in this section. And that is what we require for A Street.
We require a masonry, 3-foot masonry wall on
Can't be
A
higher
Street?
than 3 feet. Yeah, we do, for parking.
Okay. I like that.
You'll see it on our new parking lot that's going in right now. The
Oh,
wall.
yeah?
Mhm.
Good.
Marseille, I have a question. Has there been any consideration as to why we need another car wash when we've got 2 in the same square mile?
No, sir. I think there's probably more than 2. We leave that to the free market to decide how many car washes.
There's nothing uglier than an abandoned car wash.
I would agree, and I think that you'll find lots of people share that sentiment. But I think we've had a lot of conversations lately about property maintenance, et cetera, and it may be that we need to adopt a property maintenance code so that abandoned properties like that don't just sit there looking like an eyesore.
I am just concerned that we're not properly planning how we want our town to be. And that's why I'm asking, couldn't a restaurant be more appropriate there as it's going into the outlet mall or something?
We had a restaurant group talk to us. They didn't find it to be a feasible site. Doesn't mean another one might not. That's another reason why it is a specific use permit. You don't have to approve it. If you want something to be local commercial and you want to rezone it to commercial shopping, it generally is with the intent of producing something with a sales tax that comes back to the city. But there are benefits to having a car wash. They do get a lot of business and a lot of people coming to that area. So I can see that it would be beneficial to the citizens for local commercial purposes.
Yeah, but there's one just 200 yards up to the north. So, I mean, if they want a car wash, they can go to that one too. I mean, for that part, and especially for sales tax purposes, now that the mall is open, there's a reason to build. Before the mall was open, or if it was even going to be open, I think
Well-
there should be consideration for placing a sales taxable entity in that spot possibly.
Even if we rezone to commercial shopping, just like on A Street, they're building an office. So there is no guarantee that you're going to get a sales tax producing entity at that location. If they do not build, you may get an office.
That's true.
Or you can even have an office with residential on the second floor. It's just part of the free market, and we don't, at this point, dictate that. We have some spacing requirements for a couple of things in our code, but at this time, we do not regulate car washes.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't.
But we don't. If you would like to write up a nice policy for that and have it adopted in the future, I would be willing to entertain it, but tonight, that is not the case.
Are we concerned about any runoff going into Polecat Creek or anything of that nature that would, because of the nature of the chemicals used for car washes and stuff?
That question has been sent to the applicant and the owner. They are aware of that question, and they will answer that. We are always concerned about runoff, and there are so many levels of control. We don't control the use, but we definitely control the runoff. And so all of those entities, I think they'll be able to share and give you more detail on that. It's always a concern, but I have faith that when our engineers that we work with some outstanding engineers, and I have faith in their work, and when they seal it, it becomes their issue.
When can we expect those details to be coming forward
What details?
on the runoff and on some of these other issues dealing with the engineering of the site and some of the things that you had mentioned?
They don't start engineering until they get land use approval. So when I bring you something, they may have done some preliminary things. We'll talk about it on our pre-development meeting. We'll talk about water, sewer, storm, what's existing, what we have to build, what will be public, what will be private, where's the access, how can you change the access, what can you do about screening, did you know there's a creek, did you know this? We have all of those conversations, but when it comes to planning commission, it is a land use conversation, and the question before you, is this an appropriate place for a car wash in the city? And the question is yes or no, and then if it's yes, they then hire their engineers to go to the next level, and that's when they'll do the detailed analysis of their stormwater and all of the other issues, the water, sewer, et cetera.
All right, any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and have the applicant come up, please, sir. If you would, give your name and address.
Absolutely. Good evening. Justin Abrone, Walsh Design Collective, 123 North Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, Tulsa, Oklahoma. As Marseille did a good job explaining, what we're looking at is a currently zoned IL piece of property that we'd originally put an application in for CG zoning, but through the recommendation and discussions with staff, it was recommended that we move forward with the CS with the specific use permit. Even though we are talking land use, I'd be happy to kind of break down a few different items that were discussed right now, including first the stormwater drainage. Yes, it will be directed more when we get to preliminary plat, which is completely expected, the platting process. We do have representation here with me that can talk in greater detail, better detail than me, on the fact that car washes, they have underground recirculation and storage capacity that makes sure that those chemicals, everything that applies to the car washing process, stay internal to the site. So much of the drainage would be associated with surface drainage from the parking lot, which again, we completely expect to abide by every standard that the city has for that engineering process. So whether that be detention pond, fee in lieu of, not sure what that looks like quite yet, but happy to do that. As far as the landscaping, I think we're in agreement with that as well. I think we've mentioned dilapidated properties, especially a car wash in the future. I think at the very least what you can expect is your current zoning standards require landscaping, both external and internal to the property. We're looking at also, even though we're 1,200 feet from residential property, including fencing and possibly landscaping along the west side, just to create that additional buffer. We're not trying to cause any issues, any problems with the neighborhood. In fact, we're hoping that they would be our tenants, or not tenants, but our customers as well. So you would end up with a property with landscaping, parking, the right facade standards that would apply to any other commercial property, whether that be CSCG, office, whatever it might be. What I will say, do you mind going to the comp plan map? I think that would be a good place to jump off. It is very difficult to see. Comes across fairly small, but where you see the triangle with a portion of it being pink, do you mind if I walk over and point? That's exactly it. You got it. All right. So it's very clear to me that the portion that is denoted there in pink applies also to the regulatory floodplain and the wetlands that apply to this area. So we are designing to build exactly within that portion, which is for high-intensity commercial type use. So again, we came forward with a CG type zoning. We have a car wash in mind for this particular property. It does overall comply with the comprehensive plan designation. We have the same zoning directly to the north and directly to the northeast. And we're designing this to have buffers, again, to the creek to the south and to any residential or agricultural uses to the west. So we will address in the future, of course, the floodplain, wetlands, the drainage. One of the main points I would like to discuss a bit further is we would love to have access with the Quick Trip that's to the north. That would be completely ideal for us. I think the fear that we have from the client perspective is that we have a platted property that's already been built out that has a point of access. We cannot guarantee that Quick Trip will be in line with us sharing access with them. That just is not a guarantee that we can ever make. We can certainly reach out, and that would be the plan. But otherwise, what we propose is the existing drive that we have, which does meet the separation requirements that we would have for commercial property on this particular street on Elm. So we're meeting every standard that's applicable. We're happy to look into shared access, but our fear, again, is we cannot guarantee that Quick Trip would be in line with a mutual access agreement, a shared drive type agreement moving forward. We can try, but can't guarantee it. I think outside of that, we received Marseille had sent an email with very concise comments from a citizen, which, again, we greatly appreciate. There's comments for, comments against what we're looking at. I think I've addressed a number of the comments, but beside that, there were comments on perhaps signage in proximity to the Creek Turnpike. All we are proposing is that we meet every standard of the city. We're happy to discuss anything further. If people want to come up and discuss it, we're happy to listen and perhaps make modifications. But overall, we're just going with what the comp plan designation is, the zoning code, and every regulation that's applicable to us. So with that, we agree with the conditions that were proposed, including the landscaping along the east. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have for me.
What are the hours of operation of this place?
Do you mind?
Sure.
All right.
Hello,
Hi.
Brandon Murphy. Nice to meet you all.
Could we get your address as well, sir?
I'm sorry?
Could we get your address as well,
Sure.
sir, please?
It
Thanks.
is, I moved recently. I lived in the Jenks School District. Put me on the spot here. It is South Hudson Court, just south of 101st. What's our address? 11677 South Hudson Court. Wow, that was awesome. Thank you, guys. Sorry about that. I'm a little nervous. Also, Oklahoma 74137.
What are the hours of operation of this? place?
Hours of operation, let's get back to that. Okay. Currently, and we have for the last 5 years, been open from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m., Monday through Sunday, or Sunday, 7 days a week.
So Rob said that you guys have one of these at 101st and Memorial, and you have an agreement with Quick Trip?
Well, the agreement with Quick Trip probably happened before our time. My nephew and I started that business in 2017. We bought Sunshine Car Wash at that time, and it was one of those old dilapidated car washes that you guys were talking about. And it was a shared access at that point, so I'm not aware of any agreement that took place. We just benefited from that, that drive that you're referring to, and that was part of the land purchase when we bought the original car wash. So again, it was designed that way, and I think we both benefit as businesses. That when people buy gas, typically they're looking at the outside of their car and how filthy it is, and they just drive right down and wash their car. And that's been a great relationship. In fact, I think most of the corporate executives from QT belong to our membership plan.
So if you don't get it, I guess we just have one entrance, correct?
That would be correct. And we would love, as you know, he said, I think Justin pointed out, we just don't have any guarantees. And we have friends there, and it would be great, but there's just no way to 100% say that this would be dependent on that, because that's out of our control.
Car wash will have vacuums?
Yes, it will, yes.
Okay.
And they really suck. They're good.
That sounds like a great marketing.
Sorry.
I think the thing you needed to
They
say,
actually are really good.
I think the thing you needed to say is they're super quiet. Which they're probably not.
It is the highest level of quality in the industry, and they are, they do make noise, but they're not to the level that you can't even carry. You can carry on a conversation standing right next to it and be perfectly fine. And that's the same system we plan on using. So
Brandon, another,
Is this,
sorry.
is this the, do you only own the other one on Memorial?
we have one on 71st and Sheridan also.
Not by any waterways?
Not by any waterways, but that was an interesting conversation about, what happens with the water, because that's also a really big part of how we design this. And I am aware there are other washes in town, and I'm not sure what your experience is with those, but the way that we design that is it's self-contained, for the very reason that you're bringing up, is the concern is water runoff. And so everything that happens inside of that is self-contained. It goes down and into storage tanks, and then we have this pumped off-site. So because we do a great job of drying the car, there's just very little residue when it comes out, and we have about double the average dryers when a vehicle goes through. And so outside of normal rainwater, we're not adding any additional moisture to anything outside of our entrance and our exit. And everything, again, is pumped in a pit that goes below, and then those are much like a gas station or filling station. Those are all maintained internally. So, and we actually use quite a bit of reclaimed water ourselves, so we don't even put as much of a burden as you might think on city water. It's really an amazing system.
My only problem is it's next to residential. The other one we have doesn't have residential around it. Then we have another one that's down south, but that probably predates most people in the room.
Right.
It's been there quite a while that have lived here at least. And I'm not a fan of it either, so thank you for your questions.
Absolutely. Did you have a question over here?
So I would add to the comment about noise. Do you mind going to the site plan? It's been designed specifically for the vacuums to be on the east side, at least abutting the street, as opposed to the residential to the west or anything to the south. The city has standards, again, for lighting, sound, other things that we would certainly abide by to make sure that we're not causing any pollution, noise, or light pollution in that regard. Yeah.
I had another question. Did you?
I was going to remind him something that was on there that they had asked, and I didn't know the answer to
Go ahead.
specifically. I don't know if you or the owner knows all of the different organizations that you have to go through to get approval, especially adjacent to a creek.
I don't know in particular, but I would fully expect that we go through DEQ,
Right.
to some degree FEMA. And a lot of that has to do with if you're disturbing land that would be within the regulatory floodplain in the first place. And everything that we're proposing would be outside of the regulatory floodplain. So nonetheless, they would be contacted. We would ensure that any permitting is done according to that. But from my experience, yes, we would, since we're staying outside of the regulatory floodplain, we wouldn't be dealing with that quite so much. But again, we would be dealing with detention when the time comes.
Since this would be the third car wash in about a less than 1.5 mile stretch of roadway, can one of you explain the demand that you see there and how you come to think this would be a lucrative project for you?
Sure, I can't speak to the demand necessarily. Of course, I'm here for the
Okay.
land use, but yeah.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, that's a great question, because we certainly are very cautious about how we approach those decisions. And you always have a certain degree of questions anytime you start a project like this. So we go off of data, and based on the amount of cars that are currently traveling down PRM at this point, based on a 1% capture rate, that fits our business model. We also have done a fair amount of research on the two that you're talking about. And with all respect, those two washes combined together wouldn't equal the level of quality and equipment that we build in our model. We have been rated one of the best in the world by our industry, not only in the quality of equipment that we provide, but also in the service. We like to think of ourselves as the Chick-fil-A of auto washing. We have local young people that work, and they do a great job, but the machinery itself draws a crowd. We have clients who drive from Owasso that are members, and I think anytime you're building probably anything, the question is, how much is too much? And I understand in your viewpoint, the one down the street that may be considered a viable, and I think it's this one right here, a viable competitor. Average build cost of a facility like that, because we're familiar with those, and they do get put up and categorized in the same respect. But for us, when we are, because we're on Memorial now, and there are actually 4 very close to us, and we're providing a wonderful product in our eyes for our customers. And so we do see this part of Jenks being a wonderful opportunity for us. The traffic count, the demographics, we tailor to a high-scale automobile. We have Bentleys and Ferraris and all kinds of wonderful exotic vehicles. As long as they can make it onto our really easy loading process, it seems to be a hit. And so we think that regardless of the 2 options that people have, those, in our opinion, are not great options, even though they do the same thing. It's just like any store. When competition arrives, it may not mean that it's always going to be favorable for those that are in the marketplace. And we don't wish any harm, but if the options aren't great, then the public gets to choose whether or not that's their best option. So that's, yeah.
Thank you. So it sounds like the car count is what you're looking for, and
It
you've
is.
got a better mousetrap, and you're going to do better. So
That's it.
great.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have one question. Marseille, question for you.
Yes.
This was years ago, but the car wash there at 111th and Elm, it was owned by one owner, sold. He came in, made modifications to it, but there wasn't any permitting that was done. And so when I was on the adjustment board, we had to deal with that. So what's our process now? Because car washes are built, and they're usually sold. They're not retained that long. What is our process that if that was to happen, what comes back to the city to ensure that the next owner is going to maintain and keep the car wash as what we feel we're approving?
So the biggest thing is being very specific when you make a motion. And if you want, they've agreed to landscaping, but let's say you want all the trees to be pine trees, I don't know. And that's part of your motion. We approve this with the conditions from staff, and all the trees have to be pine trees. So when something moves forward, even if the owner decided to make changes, they still have to come back to the city, and we pull out the document that's specific to this site, and we say, well, you can do the 3 things that you want to do, but you can't change the type of trees. You can only have pine trees, because that's what the motion said. So the city then it's adopted by ordinance, and then it's enforceable by the city. So anything that you put in the motion as a condition is enforceable by the city in the future, regardless of who owns it, et cetera. So if it ceases to be a car wash, it gets a little bit trickier. I think the conditions would probably only apply to a car wash. If it became a drive-through tea shop or coffee shop, I could probably justify all the trees have to be pine trees. See what I'm saying? Like, I could still, if it didn't change that much, if they weren't raising it, et cetera, I could still probably enforce those conditions that you established. But anything that's established by ordinance, the city can enforce. So if it's part of your motion, and then now, you're the recommending body. So your motion becomes the recommendation to council, and then council would have to adopt the recommendations that you make. And then they're enforceable. So I will say, sorry to keep talking, but there is one car wash that has been wanting to do some things, and they are bound by some of the existing conditions that have been put on them. And so they're kind of limited in what they can do.
With the parking going in the way it does, is there any concerns about that being backed up to Elm? I mean, I see 12, 14 cars there, but is that an accurate display? There's no concerns?
It wouldn't be an accurate display. No, it'd be a rough estimate based on, again, by the time we get the building permit, that phase, we would have the right number of parking that would be required. But as far as the parking, no, not so much a concern.
I'm just talking about the lines going in, yeah,
The
and it being
Just talking
backed
about
out
the
to Elm.
stacking
Yeah,
of
You actually have to
Customers
have an
waiting.
escape lane.
Sure.
You have to have a lane where a car can choose to get out of the line
Yes,
if they
that-
want.
That would be a dream come true, but that doesn't happen. And we do have an extremely busy site here at 101st and Memorial, and we wash a lot of vehicles. And so it takes an average of 1 minute and 30 seconds to get through. So our turnaround time is very quickly, but even on a busy day where we might service 1,300 vehicles, it is at the most 2 to 3 deep. When we opened up, there's some pictures on our Google account that show a whole bunch of cars. We gave away everything for free, and we had a lot of other, like a radio station and all of that. That is not an accurate picture. You all are welcome to go by and look at an average day, any day of the week, and it is in and out. You are rarely behind more than one vehicle, and that's on an established site with thousands and thousands of customers rolling in and out on a very quick basis. So we handle that.
How many kiosks do you have there?
We have 3, and we plan to do 3. And they're all allowing members and non-members to go through, so you're not, some people push people to a certain lane. We just let anyone go through any lane if you're a member. So I think even on a snow day where your car is covered with salt and everything else, the most we've had is like a 5-minute wait. And at that point, it might get to 4 cars deep, but we're so efficient in how we use a belt process that runs at a much higher speed. Like the one that's down the street here is about as slow as you can go. So if there's a line, we're processing cars in less than half the amount of time of what a normal processes because of the level of equipment we're investing in.
And on a drive-through, though, we do say how many cars it has to be able to handle, right?
Yes, we have code requirements, and as I was mentioning, I probably was speaking over someone, I apologize. You will have to adjust the site plan for an escape lane. People have to be able to be like, shoot, I gotta go pick up Johnny, and I don't have time for this, and get out.
Do you have future plans for additional ones if this one comes in? Do you have other ones in the work as well? How long have you owned the two that you currently have? Are any of those for sale?
That's a great question. So we love the industry. We're from Tulsa. Even though that the industry has, I think the one down the street's venture capital owned. We grew up here. I lived in the neighborhood behind the wash, so I'm very sensitive to how being a good neighbor is super important. All of those members of that neighborhood were part of that. And a large part of that question is tied to the success of this brand and how it does. So clearly, we would like to do that. I mean, of course, we think we have an amazing product that was produced right here in Tulsa, and that should the opportunity allow itself, we do have a lot of young men and women that are growing up in our industry, and they have a vision for growing the company. So sure, absolutely. We love the industry. We're not in a build up and buy off. I don't say it would never happen, but that's not in our short-term plan, and then we haven't even discussed it in our long-term plan. We love the industry, so for that reason, and we're also in the automobile industry. We own automobile dealerships in Tulsa, and so yes, we love it. We love how it fits for us. We know a lot about automotive, so yeah.
Any other questions for Justin or Brandon?
One quick question.
Okay, Marseille?
Justin, I don't know if you can answer this. We were talking about sales tax earlier, and it is the heartbeat of our existence as a municipality. Is there any portion, do the memberships or anything collect a sales tax? I felt like they don't, but I'm not sure.
I believe typically the car wash, I don't know if this is the case here, but the sales tax would really come from if they sell wiper blades, those types of things. Typically, there's a smaller office-type portion that comes with the car wash, but I don't know personally if that's included.
Okay. I didn't think
Yeah.
so, but.
I think my final comment would be, based on the conditions that were listed, the only one that I fear is the shared drive with the Quick Trip. Again, as much as we'd like to have the shared drive, I don't know that there's a condition that we can meet that would require us to work with Quick Trip and guarantee that access happens. We're proposing one access on this property, which is allowed by right. If we can make it work with Quick Trip, wonderful, but I fear that one condition when it goes to City Council.
Marseille, did you just say there's no, this won't generate sales tax?
There's no product.
It's a service.
Service industries don't have sales tax.
That's what I thought you said,
Just like you don't pay sales tax on your dry cleaning or a lot of different things. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and open the floor to public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Hello, Skylar Robson. I live at 4241 East 131st Street South. I think it's Jenks. It's in that weird Bixby Jenks Glenpool area. So, I have no issues with car washes. What I do have an issue with is the proximity to Polecat Creek. I've seen a lot of car washes that are built, they're supposed to be, total retention, but in actuality, there is some runoff that ends up going off into the street or down into a creek. And I actually looked at an aerial image of both of their sites, which I'll show you here in a second. And I actually question whether or not whatever they build would be total retention. And I guess I would ask them, you know, if it ended up not being that, would they be willing to, you know, perform the construction necessary in order to make that absolutely total retention, you know, if there's additional costs afterwards, and how would the city of Jenks enforce that if that were to happen and that caused a stormwater violation? I'll show you the photos now.
So, Tyler, if I could, just, we had a, yeah, and that's good, yeah. We had a water main break, so the water that ran off to the street was actually a break with the city that was not caught for 6 months. It was an underground, it was not above ground, and that was repaired in July of this year. And so, just context on that.
Nothing against
No,
car washes
totally
at all,
understand,
but my concern is for Polecat Creek, you know, it's an impaired waterway as it is, and Jenks has a responsibility to maintain that and prevent that from being further polluted. So, you know, I just ask that you guys make sure that in the plans that, you know, there is vegetative buffers significant.
Thank you,
around
Skylar.
it.
Appreciate it.
It's Skylar. Some of that could have been just the cars running out of the
We'll let you
garage
rebut
and gone into the
after
road.
everybody else has spoken. Thank you. All right, anyone else wish to speak? Yes, sir, come forward, please.
Are you required to be a resident of Jenks? I'm a Tulsa resident, I don't have a dog in the fight.
You're not required to be a resident to speak. No,
Hey, guys.
full public hearing.
Drew Dossie, 3827 South Trenton Avenue, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't have a dog in this fight. Obviously, I'm not a resident. I'm here for a different reason, but I'm in commercial real estate. I primarily do site selection, land development, jurisdictional waterways, hydraulic. Like it's just kind of a world that I'm in, and and just looking at this and just me thinking outside the box and talking, this makes a lot of sense commercially for the use that this man here's describing. You've got high traffic counts. You're in what I would call I call them the armpits of large highways. I mean, you see a lot of light industrial and heavy density uses that in situations like that. And I mean, if it were a large enough site and it didn't have, you know, if it wasn't so skinny at the bottom, if it didn't have floodplain issues and detention that you're going to have to deal with just in general, it would be, these small footprint things are hard for most uses. And it's a nice move for a car wash. So I'd say that. And then to the gentleman or anybody else that was worried about the water, I mean, you guys have been through this before. You guys have done platting and subdivision work and high density use. It's like the hydrology studies, the level of stuff that you have to go through, the underground storage tanks, the underwriting guidelines that they put guys like this through are so stringent that I wouldn't anticipate any issues. So I'm back there thinking, I'm like, hey, this kind of makes sense. Hey, that's actually a good site. It's like, hey, that didn't work for these guys. I might know somebody. So I just thought it's worth noting that from someone that doesn't have a dog in the fight, that this kind of makes sense. So
Thank you, Drew. Appreciate your
Drew, what was your
comments.
last name again?
Dossie.
Dawson. Got it.
Anybody else wish to speak? Ms. Montgomery, come forward, please.
I'm sorry that, Charlotte Montgomery, 10612 South Fir Avenue. I live not even a quarter of a mile from the property. And I sent, you probably received my email. I apologize for not getting it out earlier. Hopefully you were able to look through it. And that's what I'm assuming Mr. LeBruin and Mr. Murphy also received. I can tell you that on paper, it meets everything that you need it to, what it should be developed for. What I really like about it is that as an SUP, I know what's going in there. If it just goes in for CS, there's like 50 different things that are permitted and a few things that are conditional and SUP. So I really like that. I know what's going to go in there. And right now, you can have some input and the council can have some input in what that looks like and feels like. So I very much like this application. What I don't like is the caveat. If in 2 years, when this SUP runs out and they haven't built it, it stays CS, and then I don't know what's going to go in there again. So there is that caveat that something else could go in there that I'm gonna wish that the car wash went in. I can tell you, I like that it meets all the straight zoning. There's nothing to be negotiated. I like that. But if, when they get through all the engineering and all the other things, they have to make changes and they have to make a deviation, it will have to come back to us in a PUD. So I kind of like that too, because there's a protection that if it can't quite work, it can come back and be seen as a PUD. The things that give me a pause is part of what you have to look at. It's more than what's black and white. Does it check these boxes? If all you had to do was check a box, we wouldn't need you. We wouldn't. What we need you to do is to look at compatibility, not just does it meet a bunch of check marks in some boxes. Is it compatible with everything around it? And everybody's talked about Polecat Creek, but what most people don't realize is it's more than Polecat Creek, which is a waterway, and then you have the floodway in that area. There is the 128.33 acre parcel that is dedicated wetlands conservation easement. That's different than the other stuff. And that backs on two sides to this property. And it's designated parks and open space. So that 128 acres is a heck of a lot more real estate than the Quick Trip or the other things that are across the other side of the street. So that gives me a pause right there. I also have a pause in looking at the aesthetics. As I said in my email, it's a concrete shoebox with blinking lights. And it's next to a $7.1 million investment that all of us who live in Jenks own. And it's supposed to be parks, nature trails, and a ranch. So I know that the people who own the car wash, they have a model, they have a plan that has worked for them. But is a steel gray, blue, and red building with blinking lights the right thing for this spot? So what I want to ask you, and also the applicants, is I know you have a model and you have something that you really like and it's this cosmic looking thing. What can you do aesthetically to make it blend and feel more in with nature or natural. When you're backing up to nature land, trails, and the ranch. And, you know, I think there's something that can be done there. And hopefully they would be agreeable to making it more aesthetically cooperative with the land around it. I do agree about that type of business going in, and I did do the count. You have Oki Car Wash, you have the car wash next to the Come and Go at 111th and Elm, and then you have Scrubs right across the street. I did the Google Maps from one end to the other, it's 1.2 miles. But I agree, I mean, obviously, they have a good model, and their banker is willing to give them money to buy the land and do the project, so it must work out economically. But if it doesn't, we're going to have a carcass left there to look at until somebody comes in and does something else with it. I agree with that. What I would prefer, in a sense, would be some type of other commercial building. Because if you have a building, it could be a restaurant. It could be an office building. It could be some other kind of retail business. So it doesn't have to sit there looking like an empty shoebox. Environmentally, I guess I know that this is not the time or the part of the process where this is considered. So maybe it's more directed to the applicants that if this is approved and it goes to the city council, they do need to be able to answer what are the kinds of requirements that are going to be made of you when you're backing up to Polecat Creek and when you have a large wetland conservation easement. There's got to be other things. You don't have to provide that information, but I strongly suggest that they do, because there's a lot of citizens who want to know that, and I know there's a lot of counselors who's going to be asking the same question. I see where I had also talked in my email that there should be some conditions attached to the application, and one of them was the driveway access agreement with Quick Trip. That just makes sense. And on some of the others that I had listed there, some of them you can require, but I've also seen in the Planning Commission and in the City Council, some applicants will just agree to it and you don't have to require it. And knowing the council the way I kind of know them, I would suggest that they would voluntarily agree to not having permitted by use rights if indeed the car wash does not happen for them, for hotel and marijuana dispensary. And the other thing is, I think staff should take a look at the billboard signage requirements. I know there's two requirements. If it's within 300 feet, but it also has to be outside of 1,000 feet from another billboard, can one be built there? Because I'm sorry, I don't want a huge honking billboard on that lot. And that is something that they could just agree to, not do. So that's really my comments on that. I hope you will consider attaching some conditions to that. If not, I hope the applicant will voluntarily do those. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlotte. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good
Catherine
evening.
Lenhart, 777 West 106th Street South. I wasn't sure, I just wanted to ask for clarity on the sign location. Is it possible, is it shown on the map, or is it on the building?
It's really on the building. We're not much of a sign
And so just the LED part of that, I'm going to go through it really quickly, I promise. Environmental was on the list, but thanks to Skylar and Charlotte, I feel like that was addressed. The sound ordinance, noise ordinance, are you able to furnish the decibels of those fancy vacuum cleaners? Okay, because how would we know if it meets the sound ordinance or not?
Catherine, if you would address us,
Oh, I'm
please.
sorry,
and
sir.
then-
You're
then
right.
you
Oh,
know.
gosh.
You know how this
You
works.
know what? Oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
I don't know, he just was so nice and informative.
Yes,
I
yes.
kind of just naturally.
And we'll ask him those questions in
Yeah,
just a
I'm
minute.
sorry, I apologize. Because really, I do have a serious one. So where's the other map with the land use map? Please, Brandon. So when we look at that, my biggest concern was safety because of the trails that come down Peoria Elm. I do live off of 106th, and we don't have the trail system, but we have plenty of people who walk. Like the coolest thing when my child was 12, 13 was, hey, can we walk to the Quick Trip? But we all know everybody runs the light, so they have to wait, walk, and then go over to Quick Trip. And that median becomes a holding spot for the kids to play Frogger as they go across. And so I'm actually wondering, because of the fast right turn out of Quick Trip or the potential with the driveway access, what will happen? Like, there is actually residences right there across the street, and they also cross the street. So is it possible to put a crosswalk in that area? That's really my main question, because I think we've needed that really for a while with the pedestrians and then the increase because of using that access road. So I'm wondering about that, a crosswalk, and then because of its location and what we heard last night, is it possible to request a traffic impact analysis? And then lastly, what is the salmon color on the bottom by Polecat Creek? What is that?
It's local commercial.
Do we know what it is? Okay. Okay, well, then my main concern was safety. With the 1,300 cars they said on the busy day, that could be going in and out from 8 to 8 at night. Traffic impact analysis, and the consideration for a crosswalk. And that's it, thank you. And sorry about the
It's okay.
side convo.
All right, anyone else wish to speak? Anybody else from the audience? Okay, we will go ahead and close the floor, and if the applicant wants to come up and address some of those items that were, some of those questions that were raised, we would appreciate that.
All right, thank you very much. I'll be very brief, I promise. I think to start with, the main point would be that we're here today to talk about the land use of the property, not necessarily the drainage and other aspects that I can certainly guarantee will be taken care of in the future through other permitting processes. So we've brought up sales tax generation. Right now, the property is IL, it's industrially zoned. You're talking manufacturing type uses that wouldn't be sales tax generating in the first place. So I believe what we're looking at is a very good use for this particular site. As far as any guarantees or promises, we can certainly abide by the standards that the city holds us to. And I'm kind of reverting back to drainage and other things like that, but I don't know that we're in a position to offer many conditions beside that without further thought besides tonight and this particular meeting. But again, we're happy to help and work around and work with people. But as far as conditions, additional conditions being placed on traffic studies and so forth, I think that's all dictated by the city's code of ordinances. With that being said, we hope you do go forward with staff's recommendation for approval, but happy to answer further questions.
Could you address or mention the signage the owner was talking about just on the building itself, potentially I could see a ground sign out there, something on Elm. Billboard's not in the plan.
Not at all.
I don't even know
no.
if that would be possible, at that location, but,
I don't
Yeah.
know what the spacing would be.
right, we'd have to look at that. But it's not in the plans. You'd be okay with us saying, we're not gonna put a billboard on the property.
I don't have to look behind me to say
He said
no.
yes. Right.
If there's signage beside the wall signage, it would be
Right, okay.
more than likely a monument sign per code.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, further discussion amongst the planning commissioners. What do you guys think about this?
She was mentioning the sound, the decibels. You said there's no way you could answer that at all. I'm assuming that traffic coming in and out of Quick Trip would probably be a little bit louder.
I mean, you got a
Than what that would
you
be.
got a three lane, each direction interstate adjacent to it.
Right.
There's more sound coming
Ne-
off of that.
Neon lights on the building, do those go off at closing, or are they on throughout the night, or?
So the plan would be to just put a normal parking lot lighting that comes off of our vacuum so that our clients are safe when they and they can see. We typically, in the site design, use a very low level of lighting anyway because we're not retail shopping. We're just about getting your car clean is all we do. But in our design, we don't currently have a big show plan. We want to keep it respectful and knowing that the neighbors are there and all of that, so. Yeah. And it is inside,
Right.
but not.
Right, but I mean,
It's actually quite soothing.
So at midnight, they're not flashing a bunch of bright lights and illuminating the area outside of the Quick Trip, I guess is
The Quick
what I'm
Trip's
just
going to
trying to
be a lot
confirm.
more
That's what I'm asking.
distraction than
Right.
anything that we do.
Okay.
Yes.
So Marcy, can you address Charlotte's concern that if the car wash doesn't happen in 2 years, then that the SUP goes away? What would we have to do to change that so that it wouldn't revert back to a marijuana, a place that we really wouldn't want?
Well, if you really wanted to be sure about it, and before I make the next statement, I will make this statement. The largest sales tax producing entity that we have are the dispensaries. So if you really care about sales tax, you probably wouldn't want to do what I'm going to say next. The only way that you could really guarantee that a dispensary could not go in there with straight zoning is to change the zoning code to not allow dispensaries. So we could amend the zoning code to say you have to come in by specific use permit only. You could put other regulations on it. But right now, I went through and looked at all the uses. There's about 13 out of, I didn't count how many were in there, but only 13 are sales tax producing out of all the uses in commercial shopping. So if it reverted back to commercial shopping, there's a really good chance you could get an office, you could get a dispensary, you could get, man, those dispensary people, they could probably whip that building right into, retrofit it right up and get it going. I'm just teasing. Not really, but not really. So I think when you look at all the uses, in the specific use permit, when you're looking at state statute, it does tell you that you have the authority to dictate the uses, but it would only be specific to the SUP. And right now, it is specific to a car wash. You could say a car wash, I mean, it's only a car wash, basically. So if there was a sunset and it was to revert back to commercial shopping, there is no guarantee that there would not be a dispensary going there. Unless you change the code.
I will just remind everyone that it's currently zoned industrial.
That's right.
So, I mean, even if you don't like what theoretically could go in under straight zoning under CS, you have to remember what can go right now.
All right, well, I personally like the location of it. There was some discussion about being adjacent to wetlands and a conservation district. That seems like a great place to put something that's going to be not as aesthetically pleasing as some other things would be, and maybe have a little bit of noise associated with it, because it's 6 times further away than what the code asks us to do for, as far as staying away from residential areas. 6 times further away. 200 feet's the minimum, we're 1,200 feet. It's private property. This is what they're asking us to do. It meets the intent of our comprehensive plan. It meets all the coding requirements. We have addressed some sign issues, which I appreciate. I don't want a big billboard there either. We discussed some billboards a couple months ago and restricted those even further than what they currently were, so I think we're all on the same page there. I would be in support of this project.
I actually disagree with you, Scott. I mean, it does meet everything that you just said, but having another car wash in the town, I think there's a better use for that land than a car wash, in my personal opinion. I think the guy probably has an amazing product for a car wash, but I don't see a car wash being a good spot there. A good place for a car wash at that spot.
Yeah, I'm in your lane in that regard, because I'm not for sure that that's what we're determining what's marketable and what's not in a location like that. So I'd have to have more to totally disagree.
Just for discussion purposes, since we're picking on the dispensaries, if we leave it where it is as IL, it requires special use permit for them to be on that lot. If we change the zoning to commercial, then it opens up the possibility that if this doesn't go through, then we would be exposed to a dispensary at that location. If we leave it the way it is now, then they'd have to have a special use permit to be able to put a dispensary on that location.
Do we see any reason why this wouldn't be done in 2 years? Is there anything that's been a roadblock at this point? How soon would you break ground once you got all your approvals and so forth? In other words, part of me is wondering why, until they have everything they need, why we wouldn't vote on this at that point on the 2 years. But on the other side, if it's a no-brainer, within a year or two, you're going to be built, then I guess that's kind of my question, I guess, is how soon do you see this being open?
Yeah, that's a great question. Beginning construction and ending construction are always two different conversations, but our intent is to start as soon as we have approval from all of the government agencies, including what we have to comply with for water and zoning and everything. So we don't have any intent, barring an economic meltdown or something that's outside of our control. We want to get moving very quickly. We have the staff, we have the teams, we have the contacts, we have everything ready to go. But of course, as much as we know, we wouldn't want to buy the property if we couldn't get the right zone. All of that would be contingent. We're under contract, but we would need to have this assurance before we would ever, move forward with it. Yeah.
I have to agree that we don't necessarily need another car wash. I wish we had a use for this property that was going to produce sales tax for the community. But on the other hand, I am a big free market proponent, and I understand that, the car washes need to produce a better product to be able to compete with other car washes. And so that's not our problem. I think I'd be for this project.
Does anyone wish to make a motion on
Sorry,
6? Yes,
I
sir, Brandon?
apologize. Just back on, because it's been brought up a couple times, they wouldn't be able to put a dispensary without a specific use permit in IL, but there are You could do a commercial grow, education facility, research facility, testing laboratory, or a processing plant on IL. Yep. So pretty much everything except for a dispensary.
All right, can we have a motion, please? Either in favor of or against item 6?
Rob, just because it's a free market, like, I don't think there's many items that I'm not for, but I mean, just because, a car wash doesn't have to go in there. There's other people that can not other people, there's other things that can go in there.
But he owns the land.
I know he owns the land.
Other people don't own it.
You're right.
Yeah.
And he's asking us to do this on his land. And our question is, does it meet what we require, which it does. We can put stipulations on it, which we're going to do, I think, with condition of not placing a billboard on the property. But I don't think we want to get in the business of telling people what kind of business they should invest in.
And we need to provide quality services and products for our community. If the others can't compete, their car wash becomes something else. It's just plain and simple. I'd make a motion to accept the case JZ 24 SUP 122 with no billboard. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Brandon, let's vote on that. We have a motion and a second on item 6 with a condition of no billboards on the property.
Wilson,
Yes.
Bowman,
No.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
No.
Stevens,
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. Agenda item number 7 is JZ 24 PUD 146.MA1, request for a major amendment to PUD 146 overlay, general location 131st and Elm Street. Yes, and let's take a 10-minute break, and Brandon's going to set a timer for us. We'll adjourn here in 10 minutes. Thanks. At 7:43, we'll begin agenda item number 7, which is JZ 24 PUD 146.MA1, request for major amendment to PUD 146 overlay, location 131st and Elm Street.
Thank you, Chair West. This is a major amendment to an already approved plan unit development. So back in December of 2023, this was brought to you all, it's probably came in November, and then we took it to City Council on December 19th, 2023. And everything that you see outlined with that dotted line was part of the original PUD 146. And at the time, the representative said, hey, we have an idea of what we want to do over here, but we are not sure what we want to do on the northern portion. We're talking to some people, and we have some ideas, but we'll parcel that out and sell it. So what you have in red, where it has slash lines, is Phase 2 of PUD 146. And what we approved was Phase 1. And then we said, when you decide what you want to do with Phase 2, come back to us, and we'll go through the document and make sure that it meets all the standards and get you fixed up. So there were actually 3 phases, and someone asked me the other day if I'm just going to say this because I forgot originally. So it was 120 acres. And the hard corner is commercial, and there is a buffer of multifamily around the commercial. And that was approved in the PUD. So just keep that in the back of your mind. It's not before you tonight, but I had forgotten that there was that little piece there. So, yeah. Mhm. So what we're looking at right now is, let's go to page 50 of 72. So this is in the Glenpool School District, and like I just said, there were 3 phases in the original PUD, and Phase 1 was 43 acres. They are known as starter homes with 53-foot lots. Phase 2 was 55.27 acres, and it is luxury living with minimal maintenance. That is how it was described and believe is still described. They have a minimum of 55-foot lots, and I will repeat that on the hard corner is commercial shopping with a multifamily buffer. That's about 21 acres. They dedicated 12 acres to high-intensity residential and 8 acres to commercial. The current underlying zoning is RS3, and the current approved PUD is 146, so that's the overlay. And then we have a little bit of assessor data. If you turn to page 51, what I have here are the bulk and area standards, and I have Phase 1 and the underlying zoning of RS3, and then I have in yellow Phase 2, and as you can see, we still don't have a major amendment for Phase 3, and nothing is going on at this time for the commercial area. So the project area is 55.27 acres. The lot area for each one is estimated at 5,200. And generally, it's the same for the lot area per dwelling unit. The lot width, they're asking for 50-foot. The front yard setback is 20 and 25 and 15, and I'll let them explain. But basically, they're meeting the code. So the UDO says 25 feet, but then they were like, if it's a side yard, it got a little bit. It was a lot. The exterior side yard and the interior side yard. So interior side yard is 1 and 9. So one side of the house would be 1 foot, the other side of the house would be 9 feet, and you would still have 10 feet total between the 2 homes once they were built. The rear yard is 20, the height is 35, and the impervious surface coverage 60 per the chart here, and they have dedicated the minimum house size to be 1,600 square feet. They are 100% masonry, and they estimate 180 homes. The amenities that they are bringing with this PUD is, it is a gated community, so there'll be private streets. It'll have a gated entry with a very nice entry feature with a gatehouse. They'll have a clubhouse, recreational facilities. They'll have a common area with a food prep facility and meeting rooms with park and open space. They'll have a playground, recreational facilities, court gates, pool, pickleball court, common areas, trails, picnic shelters, facilities, and gazebos. So the beautiful thing about this is, even though it'll be dedicated to people who are more mature, their families can come and visit and still have all the amenities that you would need for your family to enjoy. You can go out and play at the playground, at the swimming pool, etc. And I do love the, I almost never give my personal opinion because every time I do, someone scowls at me. I like the food prep thing. I thought that was cool. So on page 55 of 72, you can see the zoning map. All of that is zoned RS3. Up at the top, you see, I just kind of estimated where it was located, and that's in the red lines. And then you see the land use map. So PUD 146 was submitted originally and was approved and met the intent and the spirit of the UDO. We had no initial comments from the Technical Advisory Committee. We do give this out to our TAC. The amendment before you tonight is for Phase 2 and requires a major amendment to PUD 146, as was stated in the original approval and staff report. And then below that is 16-9-8, which is the planned unit development language from our code. That goes on for several pages. On page 57, staff recommends conditional approval of the request for a major amendment to PUD 146. This change does not amend the underlying zoning for Phase 2, actually, for any of it. Number 1, follow the UDO and city code as related to oil and gas wells and drilling. I think there in the overall site, there may be some, I can't remember, but I think there's some on this specific place. Number 2, exception to architectural features as defined in the UDO. Exception, they're asking for an exception. I'll let them explain their exceptions in greater detail. They're asking for an exception to the original request. So one of the big things coming from the original request, staff said, we need a north-south collector that runs all the way from 121st to 131st. And Mr. Shaw, with Shaw Homes, and Mr. Betchen, the engineer of record for the properties to the north, worked with us, and we talked about it, and we worked on it, and we had a pretty good alignment. And that's all fine and well until you put a gated community in, and now we can't get through. So one of the exceptions in the amendment that they're asking for is to not require a collector going through that one particular one, through this subdivision. There's still land to the west that we could possibly get a north-south. There's also a blue line stream, which it might be easier in the future to get an east-west collector on the north side and an east-west collector on the south side if it were ever to develop. Just a lot of thoughts and processes that we go through when we're trying to evaluate future development. Another exception is requests for sidewalks on one side of the street with varying widths from 4 to 5 feet. An exception to the requested signage. And the UDO says 15 square feet, and I believe they're requesting 48 square feet. And I always say to them, make sure you think about accessory dwelling units in the private covenants. The city does allow for them. It was one of the, when you talk about a big common conversation nationwide, I think you'll hear it on the political platforms of all the main parties. You'll hear it in the local diner. You'll hear it at planning commission. You'll hear it at city council. We have a housing shortage. We don't have affordable housing, and we need more housing and some smaller options. So we allow for accessory dwelling units, and that is one of the ways that we meet that requirement, is to allow accessory dwelling units so that if you wanted your family member, your mother, your father, your child to live near you and your property was big enough, you can put an accessory dwelling unit on it, or you could build an accessory dwelling unit and rent it out at an affordable rate. And that provides a service to people who maybe are in a place of transition or just maybe they're trying to retire and their budget is tight because they're going to go to Europe for 2 years or something. I don't know. So just think about that and put that in your private covenants. Follow the subdivision regulations, and then Section 6 of the UDO will lay out additional details of development. So it's very important to look at those things. They've looked at all of it. They have agreed to it. And if I made an error, I'm happy to let them correct me if I missed anything. So if you look on page 58 begins the PUD, and then you can go on through. It's has your development concept. This is a gated community. I already said that. It has private streets. And I will let the actual product be told to you by the applicant, because I think that they do a really good job of explaining their vision. I think they've done an excellent job, and I believe they have some references for you that you may be familiar with. So I don't think I have anything else. I listed it in the staff report. I tried to go through the PUD and highlight the things, the exceptions. I don't have any more comments. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer them.
I have a question on page 63 inside the PUD. The entry gates will meet the requirements of the City of Jenks subdivision regulations. I want to ensure that there's ample stacking distance, since we're coming straight off of Elm into this. It's not even off of secondary road.
So we did address that in the UDO, and it does, I don't remember exactly, but we can look it up if you want, but it does, it was a very big deal when we adopted the new language, that we make sure that we're getting people out of the street, that if your landscape person is there with
Right.
their truck, their trailer, there's still room for the next person to stack and be safely off the street. I believe our code addresses that well, and I'll definitely have them to look at it again.
Okay, thank you. All right, other questions?
So, just thinking that this would be a more mature resident, and obviously they would have grandchildren and people come. And I read where it talked about common parking, but just trying to visualize where is that additional parking going to be?
Brandon, can you go to page 70? There's a better site plan in there. If you can zoom into that, that would be great.
Because these were all
You
two
know,
car
it would be
garage,
even
too.
better if you flipped it. Can you do that? Rotate would be the correct word, huh? So if you look on page 70, it has a pretty good illustration. They've got parking when you come in the gate. They've got additional parking around the playground and the detention area. And then they have more when you're coming around just before you have to choose if you're going to go left and right off of this, what they call A Street. There's parking there. They have, no, that's not parking. Yes, it is. And then they have parking between, on the north above the detention pond. So they have it kind of scattered throughout, so that if your family member is in this section, there's a couple of different places that they can park while they're visiting if they need to. I think their driveways, yeah, there's a lot of parking.
Okay. Because I know I have friends that live in Rabbit Run, and we have a little gathering. Oh, the parking's atrocious, because, those homes are close together, and you have to park so far and then come back. So that's why I was asking
Yeah.
about the parking.
Looks like there's 80 or 90 spots throughout there, if I'm seeing that correctly.
I did never count them. If you look right up by the initial,
Left of the gate and then
yeah,
both
entryway,
sides
there's
by the-
more, probably, I'm gonna guess it's more than what Rabbit Run provided.
There's
Oh,
one
okay,
off
I see.
each cul-de-sac.
Can you see them, Gina?
No, can you?
Can you point it out, Brandon?
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
This is her demographic. You need to zoom in.
Just for clarity, I did look up the stacking requirements. The call box shall be a minimum of 3 car lengths, 60 feet from the ultimate curb of the adjacent arterial street, of the adjacent street.
Okay, so the call box is 60 feet from the street. That's good.
Are the sidewalks going to be big enough for golf carts?
I'll let well, on one side of the street only and 4 to 5 feet.
For us older people, come on.
Any other questions for Marseille? Nope.
I do. I have a
Sorry, go
question
ahead,
about
Greg.
the requested variance on the signage at 48 square feet. Seems, with one entrance off of Peoria Elm, seems like a lot of sign for one area, just for one entrance way. When the regs say 15, and we're going to 48, it seems like a lot of
Right.
sign, a lot of change.
That is a lot. I'll let them ask or explain their thought for that.
Okay.
I agree. That is a lot.
Anybody else? All right, is the applicant present tonight? Thank you, sir.
Hey, good evening. Justin Bruin, Wallace Design Collective, 123 North Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. Here with Brad Hoffman, sitting here next to me. Happy to answer questions about this project. So to jump in, Marseille did a good job explaining kind of the background here. So back in December 23, the original PUD was approved, and essentially of the 3 phases, the 2 phases that were left out of the actual plan were just stated like, hey, when you come back, you're going to do a major amendment. And that's what we're here to do. So we have the major amendment. We're keeping the same underlying zoning, being the RS3 that was already applying. What we're proposing here is up to 180 residential lots based on the RS3 zoning, 5,200 square foot lots. Not to replicate everything Marseille said, because she did a great job. Essentially what I'll say is that it's 55 and over community, and the exceptions that we are requesting are based on kind of nuances that I'll let Brad define a bit further here in a moment. But the big one to maybe begin with is the 9-foot, 1-foot side yard setback. Effectively, we have 10-foot total, which would be the requirement. We've discussed this with the building officials to confirm that we're in good order with this. It is just a design preference from our client to do it that particular way. But at the end of the day, it still does meet the building code. As far as the sidewalks, we're proposing 4-foot sidewalks. I don't know whether that applies for golf carts necessarily, but what you can see on our plan here is that in the reserve areas, including the creek to the north, on the north side of our property, we have trails that go throughout the development, and I suppose those would be a great option to include possibly golf cart trails there. But we have detention ponds based on the impervious surface. As Marseille had mentioned, 60% is the impervious requirement that we have on the site. Being 5,200 square feet and 1,600 square foot, give or take, for the residential housing sizes, we're well within our means on the impervious surface. But as we move forward to platting, of course, we'll follow any engineering standards that would apply to that. The amenities are again important. We have the clubhouse that is on the eastern side, northeastern side of the property. So as you enter, maybe I'll start there. The stacking will meet the stacking requirement for the city, and we'll ensure that. Again, we've discussed this with the fire marshal. We've also talked about the separation requirements between our development on Elm as opposed to the PUD that's either in process or being approved directly to the north, to make sure that we're in compliance with the city engineer standards. So as we enter, we've got the clubhouse. We have plenty of open space reserves with the trails that exist there. And we basically leave it open for a variety of amenities that maybe fit the clientele for this particular site. So in the PUD, we list out the trails, playground, pickleball, pool, recreation center, green amenities, and then not really amenity, but we also have, I believe it's on this exact plan here, the fencing. We would have perimeter fencing that would surround the entire site. On the west side, we're looking at more of an open face fencing since it's open land directly to the west. As far as access goes, Marseille is absolutely correct. It was brought up to us, the concept of a through road that went to the north all the way to the south to 131st Street, but again, being a private gated 55 and over community, that does not necessarily meet the standard that we were hoping for. And with the plans that were proposed to the north, any entrance would cross essentially a blue line stream to the north, making it essentially unfeasible to get that done. But if you look along the west property boundary and the south property boundary, we have areas that would, at the time of platting, be preserved for potential access on the west and potential access to the south, certainly for, at the very least, fire, emergency access in and out. Specifically to the west, there might very well be an opportunity to take that further north all the way up to the roadway. The sidewalks, basically our intent here is to have full connectivity as a master planned style community throughout the development. I believe the standard requires, or at least requests sidewalks on both sides of the development, but we believe with the plans that we have shown, that if we have them on one side of the roadway, that we still meet the intent along with the trails that provide further connectivity and access throughout the site. It also overall reduces the impervious surface that would be on this development site. I think with that, if you don't mind, I'll give Mr. Hoffman a chance to explain a bit further just the details of this particular development.
Brad, if you would give your name and address for us, please. Thank you.
Brad Hoffman, 13422 South 19th Street, Bixby, Oklahoma. No, I purchased the company that developed Rabbit Run about 2 years ago, and then stepped in and continued the development in the lakes at Rabbit Run across the street. It is it's not restricted to 55 plus community. However, the way we market, the way we sell, it is to that empty nester that there's a huge need for people in big two-story houses. Their kids are going off to college, and they don't need the large house with stairs. And when you try to find a small house with great luxury, like we provide, it's just not out there. So we build the smaller home for retirement, 100% maintained on the on your yard maintenance, gated, so it's very secure. People can travel, go on vacation, know their yard's maintained. It's in a secure neighborhood. The homes they range from $450,000 to over $1 million. So they are, even though they're smaller, they're very high quality luxury, a lot of extra details. It's our goal to have every home in the neighborhood look different. They are custom. We meet with each person and customize their home to what they want. The way we do our setbacks, that 1 and 9, the reason behind that, the why behind it is when you have your standard neighborhood, you put the house in the middle, you have 5 feet on each side, then there's a fence, a wood fence typically, and that 5 feet is not very usable, and It's hard to grow grass in, so what we do is push the house over to one side. Now you have 10 feet of usable space. It seems more efficient to us. And we, we position it allows us to get more windows in the house and allow more sunlight to come in. And so you have that 10 feet to your neighbor's yard, and then the fencing just ties into the back of the houses, so you have less fencing. We do not allow any wood fencing in our neighborhood. It's all Trex or wrought iron. So the value of this neighborhood, 30 years from now, it still feels good. It holds that value because you don't have the wood fencing. And all our exteriors are all required masonry, brick, stone, or stucco. And if you've ever driven through one of our neighborhoods, they're very unique, special, beautiful homes. It raises the land value of those around you, and it brings a lot of people into the area to go shopping, to go to a nice car wash. So we're excited to be in the city of Jenks. We think it's a great location. Our market is to be around larger homes, more affluent homes, people ready to downsize and move out and relax and have a lifestyle that we provide. Any questions?
Looks like you did a great job, and it's a great-looking neighborhood. And I was going to ask how you kept it to 55 and over. Thank you for answering that question.
We do have some young executives that
Yeah,
like
that's
the
good.
lifestyle. They families that have a lot of kids, they come and look. They go, we don't want to live here. There's not the basketball courts and large amenities it's just there's better neighborhoods for them. So based on marketing and design, the way we do our houses, we do not allow any two-story homes in the neighborhood. That's in our covenants. So it's really restricted to that. But there are some young executives, they like that lifestyle. Maybe 1% would be under 55.
Yeah, thank you for bringing a nice product to Jenks.
Any other questions? No. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Justin, did you have something else to?
I don't have anything more to add, just
Okay.
if there's any questions.
All right, thank you. All righty, we'll go ahead and open this up to the public. Is there anyone that wishes to speak? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
My name is Jerry Maddox. I live at 13153 South Norfolk. I have basically two questions. First, that whole area has had toxic waste in it. Has that been adequately addressed and taken care of? And I'm sure every one of you know the answer to that. So I'm asking, has it been?
We'll answer that in just a moment. What was your second question?
My second question is traffic. I love having neighbors, but have you tried driving down Elm at 8 in the morning and try to get through there? And you could say, oh, we're going to widen Elm. We won't widen it enough. And how about 121st Street? How, when, and how is that going to be widened? Is that something you guys address?
Marcia, yeah, would you like to answer that?
On the traffic, the 121st Street between Elm and,
Elwood,
I think everything that is on the long-range plan has been done to
long
date.
range? Lady, 10 years is more than my long range is going to go. I'm sorry. It needs to happen. If this is going to be built, those roads need to be widened now.
Elm will be. We have all the right-of-way for Elm expansion.
You know what? I've heard that.
Sir,
I haven't even seen any
sir, let her answer your
carpools.
question, please. Let her answer
Okay.
your question. Thank you.
We do have the right-of-way purchased, and the designs are close to completion, and they should be starting in the next year.
I guess that's the best we can do. I have one comment that I'll make on this. I would never buy a house where I had one way in and out. If you have a traffic accident up close to that gate, how do you get in and out? How does your ambulance get in and out?
Do you want to answer that?
We have taken this to the fire department and to the police department, and they have approved it as presented.
I would
So,
never buy a house there.
Fortunately, you don't have to.
I'm done, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, sir. Anyone else wish to speak? Oh, let's talk about the toxic waste real quick, because I know that we have another development that's in process closer to 121st, west of Elm, where they did extensive core drilling in that area. Is that correct, Marseille?
so all the property I know to the north does have a clean slate. It has a clean bill, and I have seen that documentation. I have not seen the documentation on this one yet. I can request it and get it. It's not something that we require, but when they go through the plating, other agencies will require it. They'll have to prove that it is habitable. So at north of 121st, they do not have the ability to let habitable structures be on that property. So that will be something that they'll have to go through when they're in their planning process. You have to deal with different agencies based on what the previous land use was, and there have been oil wells, so it is a brownfield, and they'll have to make sure that, I'm sure he's already done his due diligence or he wouldn't be investing, but they would get those documents through organizations outside of the city.
Thank you. All right, other questions, other comments from public? Does anyone else wish to speak on this? All right, we'll go ahead and close the floor. If you'd like to come back up and address anything that you heard there.
Sure, yes. Let me begin with, again, the 2 points of access. It was mentioned that there's only one way in and out of this particular site. Those are true feasible emergency access points that we have on the south and the west side of the property.
Yeah, it's right in the middle there. Yep, they've got crash gates in there.
That's exactly right. Second thing is, absolutely, we're going through right now that process in preparation for platting of going through the oil well, ensuring that they're capped and all that work. So that's all part of the process, and we're on top of it.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions for the applicant?
So the road to the north where those houses, that road's never going to connect? See how it looks like it's going to be a road? Is that not a road?
Correct. I don't know if that is the final design on what
That's
happened
what I
to the
figured,
north necessarily, but that is correct. That wouldn't be an entrance going down.
I think the applicant to the north has amended that. It doesn't go there anymore.
All right, thank you, Justin.
There may be one, in the subdivision regulations, if your subdivision would increase traffic by 150 cars at peak, you are required to do a traffic impact study.
Got it. Thank you for reminding me. I think one of the main points is, as Brad did a good job mentioning, with the 55 and over community, we're not going to see the typical residential 8 o'clock peak hour traffic leaving to go to work, and same for coming back. It's a lot more based on studies staggered throughout the day. But understood that that's a requirement. Thank you.
All right, is there a motion for item number 7, which is the major amendment to PUD 146?
But before we do that, I
Yes,
still
sir.
had a question about the signage change.
Oh, yeah.
Requiring signage.
We did not. What was the square
But,
footage they're asking for?
48
Greg?
square feet, and the regs say 15, so that's
Yeah.
quite a difference in signage size. I had a question about that.
Thank you, Greg.
Sure, and that is certainly something I could accept a condition along the lines of, I don't have the dimensions here with me, but I would not like for that to hold it up. If the condition is that we go before the board through a different measure, through an amendment, we can do that. But essentially, it would be for our frontage access sign to the neighborhood.
Is there a reason it was 48?
Brad knows.
No, I
Oh.
don't know, but I know what we want it to look like, the Lakes at Rabbit Run or Rabbit Run. And we do a large, usually stone entry that's, say, 6, 7 feet tall, and then up to 20 feet wide. And then we do some type of ornamental iron on that states what that is. And I'm not sure how you measure that. So, I mean, I think in the, like, since I don't know the exact answer, we can always come before you and say, this is our entry monument, this is what it looks like, this is the square footage of that, and then run that through at that time, so. But I don't have the answer to that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, if I'm being quite honest, I think it would depend on the measurement and how the measurement
How it's
happens
measured, yeah.
for the actual sign. So I just frankly don't have that answer right in front of me today. But if it's measured based on the actual lettering of the sign as opposed to the size of the border and the entire monument, it may very well be within the standards that are applied. But again, we wouldn't want that to hold up. So if that needs to be a condition, no problem. We can address that.
Okay. That's right.
Yeah, that's Rabbit Run.
Can you see it, Craig? So it is large.
So the signage is really more ornamental than, that's not what I had in my head when I saw the word sign. It was more illuminated billboard or something really that was going to be.
That's kind of part of the entry feature, the fencing, the gate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I don't have an issue with
That I
that.
mean-
I don't know how we address it as far as in the code, because 15,
It fits the design of the homes.
it already is in the PUD at that, so.
Okay, that's fine. I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
now, when we create an entry, it's like a front door into your house, and that's how we want our neighborhood to feel like, this is a nice place.
Gotcha. All right. Is there a motion on item 7?
I'll make a motion to approve JZ 24 PUD 146 major amendment number 1 crossbind.
I second that motion.
All right, let's vote. Brandon?
Wilson,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
Yes?
Stevens,
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. In other business, Mrs. Hilton, do we have any planning updates?
Do you have any questions about updates that, because I can't think of anything. We have followed up with 2 of the downtown master plan, actually 3, but we then followed up again with 2 of them, and we are now talking about the details of how to move forward and perhaps offering a contract, so that's exciting. Freese and Nichols withdrew their offer. And can you think of anything else, Brandon? We're gonna bring you, I think in October, what month is this? August. In October, I'm gonna try to bring some zoning amendments. We didn't actually finalize the billboard conversation. So I'm going to ask the city manager about that, and then also finalizing the, hopefully trying to get the noise ordinance finalized, the billboard and signage finalized, and then I need to bring you some cleanup on the comprehensive plan text and some other text language in the code. I'll give you more details about that as we move forward, but I think that's it.
We are adjourned at 8.